It's Friday, September 8th. This is an end of the day and end of the short week SPY recap. Today we end up with kind of a two up, kind of a slight failure looking bar where we have a bit of a shooter look to it, although we're still green on the day. And we'll have to see what that means for next week. Coming into next week, as I kind of anticipated, we end up with an inside red bar here. So now it's a question of what happens in terms of breaking out either up or down, and could either of those two become a failure. So we could start down, given the red look to the bar, break out there. We have this target down here, and we'll see if it gets there. If not, if it has a down breakout and fails and comes back up through the midpoint of that range, that continues this uptrend that kind of started with this inside bar to the upside. So maybe we're heading up and we just pause for a week and we'll start higher. And again, if we start higher, we could also fail and come down too. So these inside bars, on this particular bar, we broke through and went strongly to the next target. So that's what you look for when you break the range of an inside bar. Do you have strong continuation, or do you, kind of fail and start the other way? So we'll find that out. The actionable signal is obviously a downward, if we get the two down starting next week, that target's down here, which triggers the inside bar breakout, which triggers our first target down to here. So we'll certainly be ready to go short and see on this day, if our target's reached here, and if that then reaches our weekly target. So that's what you'll be monitoring for. Any failure, any move down that fails to kind of head down there, then we head up. So let's, and it's possible we start up starting the week, and we have a kind of a continuation. If we start up above this high here, then you can see this individual bar, we kind of made a two down, and we'd have three bars compounding to try to get to that high, kind of broadening out that way. So that's kind of what we're going to look for on Monday, with the expectation to the downside, but we'll have to let price action lead the way. In terms of today and the price action today, you can see here, first of all, this was the pre-market range, and I discussed at the recap video yesterday how after this big move down, on Wednesday I think it was, we ended up kind of bouncing up here, going down, bouncing. So we had like a big trading range, kind of, which almost lined up with the pre-market range between the blue lines. You can see here down, up, little higher high, lower low, up, stayed within the range. And so we're kind of have this trading rate. It's a 3-day overlap, even though you're looking at the daily chart and you're seeing down, a little bit of a gap up. It's still a big trading range in here. So now if I look at what developed today, if I expand the 15-minute chart, you could see what happened was we tried on the first bar, we broke out above the pre-market high in the first bar high here. So there was definitely a buy attempt out of this range. But what happened was we failed and we came back into the range. So we still have this big range going sideways for 1, 2, this is the pre-market area, almost 3 days now just in this range. So that's why it almost looks like this move down is just consolidating in the range, and we see if we break lower, because that's kind of the move that preceded it. So, and then the actionable signal is to the downside. And the monthly chart, which, we're getting to, is also red and heading lower. So until we get a weekly reversal to the upside now, that then even starts to turn, is the first move that would begin to even possibly turn this green. We stay with the downward continuity on this month, although at any moment we still have time left in the month to turn it up and get this hammer bar and break to the upside. So we're still considering that, but for now we got to get that weekly chart to turn up in some way, either failing on the move down next week and going up through the range, or maybe starting up above the midpoint of this bar or in this bar and starting up all week long from the beginning. We'll find out. But anyway, for today, it was a definite buy signal here in terms of bar number 3. We went up, paused on bar 2, buy 3, and you could see here we just chopped around, and you had to kind of know you're in this trading range in here that could fail. And that was a clear, especially when you came down, held the midpoint, started up and failed again right in here. You kind of knew, or you didn't know for sure, but I mean, it was something where you had to just give up that directional move on the day, the first move that's breaking out of that trading range. And as it turned out, the market came all the way down, took out the lows. So we'll kind of monitor this trading range, relative to failed breakouts or strong breakouts, whatever develops. And in terms of the trading, like I said, if you got in here, you had to kind of realize you're trying to break out of a tough range with downside continuity on some of the bigger time frames. So you had to be very nimble here and break even type of thing, the way I would see it. I actually sold some QQQ puts instead, and they eventually came down to their, just like the SPY, the intraday low. So it was a nice trade to buy some puts once I saw the failure developing. The Qs were a little weaker. And even on this first move up, when I look around the board, I'll just end on this note. A lot of the stocks I was watching, just almost all of them, like Meta, started up and then failed. And Broadcom went up, couldn't really get above that first bar high. Netflix went down from the start and stayed down all day. Tesla started up strong, couldn't break above that first bar high. So you kind of knew, even though the SPY was trying to make that little push up, none of these big stocks were doing anything. And the overall, I bought AMD at the very beginning, just thinking maybe that SPY would have a strong breakout. I bought it here at this blue line, and I shot videos how I took a small gain on this one, because once I saw this one breaking down, I saw all the other stocks, this was one of the stronger ones, and all the other stocks were failing. I just didn't want to, really be long this market. And like I said, I got short the QQQs somewhere in here, the equivalent, and they moved down by the end of the day. So anyway, that concludes the week. Like I said, actionable signal to the downside. If we get that, the target there triggers the inside bar to downside, and then we have, targets down here on the weekly chart. And in the end, we're going to see if this weekly inside bar breaks out or fails, one way or the other, up or down. So let's see what unfolds next week. This week was definitely a consolidation week, given that big move up, and all days essentially, couldn't really build much of a rally. We went down for 2 days. We kind of just almost paused on this day, and this day failed right from the start to the upside. So we're just consolidating in here, and in a very tight range, we're consolidating here between these blue lines. You spread out the 15-minute chart, you can see it very clearly. So we really want to see what happens going out of that range one way or the other, with some of those bigger picture context thoughts in mind.